Admiral Park Jiwoo stepped through the gleaming entrance of the Golden Nebula, the most expensive restaurant floating in the outer ring of Titan Station. The massive space station rotated slowly against the backdrop of Saturn's rings, its artificial gravity keeping thousands of alien species comfortable as they conducted business across the galaxy. Jiwoo had ditched her military uniform for simple tourist clothes, a plain jacket and comfortable pants that would help her blend in with ordinary travelers for 3 months. Human complaints had been flooding intergalactic command stories of terrible service, overpriced meals, and outright insults at restaurants throughout the outer colonies. The worst reports came from Titan Station, where alien-owned businesses seemed to think humans were still the newcomers who had barely figured out space travel. Jiwoo needed to see this discrimination with her own eyes before taking action. The restaurant's interior sparkled with holographic waterfalls and floating crystal chandeliers. Massive windows showed the incredible view of space, with cargo ships and passenger vessels moving like fireflies between the stars. Tables were ranged on multiple levels, with the best spots clearly reserved for the most important guests. Elegant alien diners filled the premium seating. Tall, graceful Etherians with their translucent skin, wealthy cordon merchants with their jeweled shells, and several species Jiwoo recognized from the Galactic Trade Council. A waiter approached with obvious reluctance. Dex was a typical Altarian, blue skin, forearms, and eyes that seemed to look right through humans like they were invisible. His pristine white uniform had golden trim that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Table, Dex asked, in a bored tone, already turning toward the back of the restaurant. I'd like something with a view, please, Jiwoo said politely, gesturing toward the windows where other diners were enjoying their meals while watching spacecraft dock at the station. Dex's expression showed barely concealed amusement. Those tables are reserved for established patrons. He emphasized the word established like it had special meaning. We have a spot that should work fine for someone like you. He led her past elegant tables filled with laughing aliens, past the central dining area with its impressive ice sculptures, all the way to a cramped corner near the kitchen doors. The table wobbled when Jiwoo sat down, and the constant stream of service robots carrying dirty dishes created a noisy distraction. The smell of recycled air from the kitchen vents was definitely not part of the premium dining experience. Here's your menu, Dex said, practically dropping the holographic display tablet on the table. Try to decide quickly. We're very busy tonight. Jiwoo looked round at the half-empty restaurant, then back at the waiter with a slight smile. Take your time. I'm not in any hurry. As she studied the menu, she couldn't help but notice how different Dex's behavior was with other customers. When a group of Elthari diplomats arrived, tall beings with silver skin and elaborate head crests, Dex practically bowed as he escorted them to the best table in the house. He spent several minutes explaining the special dishes, recommending wine pairings, and making sure their water glasses stayed perfectly full. For Jiwoo, 20 minutes passed before Dex returned to take her order. I'll have the Andromedan sea fish with quantum vegetables, she said. Dex rolled his eyes. That's a very sophisticated dish. Are you sure you can handle something that complex? Most humans prefer the basic protein paste. It's more suited to your digestive systems. At a nearby table, a cordon businessman chuckled loudly. Humans and their simple tastes, he said to his dining companion. I heard they still eat food that's actually dead instead of synthesized. Absolutely primitive. Well, they only figured out faster than light travel 50 years ago, replied his friend. A reptilian Soren with golden scales. What do you expect from a species that was stuck on one planet for so long? Dex nodded along with their conversation. Exactly right. Gentlemen, these newcomers think they belong everywhere now. But some places require a certain level of refinement. Jiwoo quietly sipped her water, which had taken 30 minutes to arrive and was clearly not the premium filtered variety served to other tables. She watched as Dex made a show of explaining the restaurant's history to an Etherean family, describing how the Golden Nebula had been serving distinguished clientele for over 2 decades. Of course, we've had to adapt recently, Dex said loudly enough for Jiwoo to hear. The galaxy has become so much more diverse. Not everyone appreciates fine dining culture the way our traditional guests do, the Etherean matriarch glanced toward Jiwoo with a mixture of pity and mild disgust. How unfortunate. I suppose businesses must accept all kinds these days. When Jiwoo's meal finally arrived, 45 minutes after ordering, it was clearly a different dish than what she'd requested. The quantum vegetables were missing entirely, replaced with standard hydroponic greens that probably cost a fraction of the price. The sea fish looked like it might have been sitting under heat lamps for hours. Enjoy your meal, Dex said without even pretending to check if the order was correct. He immediately hurried away to attend to a table of Eltarian executives who had just received a bottle of wine that probably cost more than most people's spacecraft. Jiwoo ate slowly, taking mental notes of every slight, every dismissive comment, every way the staff treated her differently than the alien customers. She had experienced prejudice before, but this level of systematic discrimination was worse than the reports had indicated. These weren't just rude comments. This was an entire business model built on the assumption that humans were second-class citizens who didn't deserve basic respect. What made it particularly frustrating was watching spacecraft through the windows. Sleek, human-designed vessels that had revolutionized galactic travel, carrying cargo containers stamped with human manufacturing logos, docking at a station that humans had helped engineer and build. The aliens enjoying their premium service had no idea they were sitting inside humanity's contributions to galactic civilization while treating humans like unwelcome intruders. The situation at the Golden Nebula was getting worse by the minute. Dex had grown bolder with each passing hour, his treatment of Park Jiwoo becoming more openly disrespectful as other alien customers began to notice and join in the mockery. What started as poor service had transformed into a public spectacle that was drawing attention from across the restaurant. A table of young court traders had started making loud comments about primitive human eating habits every time Jiwoo lifted her fork. They found it hilarious that she was using actual utensils instead of the bioabsorption methods preferred by their species. One of them even pulled out a recording device, filming Jiwoo's meal while making jokes about documenting primitive behavior for the Xenobiology Museum. Dex was loving every second of it. He had found his audience and was playing to them perfectly. When Jiwoo's water glass sat empty for over an hour, he made a big show of explaining to nearby tables that some species haven't evolved past the need for a constant hydration. When she asked for basic seasoning that was standard on every other table, he loudly announced that human taste buds are too underdeveloped to appreciate our sophisticated flavors. The worst part was how the discrimination was spreading. Other waiters had started copying Dex's behavior, treating the few human customers in the restaurant with obvious contempt. A human family with 2 young children at a table near the windows was getting similarly terrible service, their food arriving cold and their requests being ignored. The children looked confused and hurt as alien diners pointed and whispered about them, but someone else was watching too. Manager Ren had been observing the situation from his position near the kitchen, his 8 tentacles moving with nervous energy as he processed what was happening in his restaurant. Ren was an Exari, an ancient species known for their excellent memory and careful attention to detail. Something about the lone human woman eating quietly in the corner was bothering him, but he couldn't quite place what it was. The breakthrough came when Dex decided to escalate things even further. He approached Jiwoo's table with a group of Altarian customers in tow, clearly intending to make her the center of attention for their entertainment. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dex announced loudly, "we have a perfect example of why humans struggle in civilized society. Notice how she's still trying to use primitive eating methods instead of proper bioabsorption. This is what happens when a species develops space travel before developing culture." The Altarian customers laughed and clapped, treating Jiwoo like she was some kind of zoo exhibit. One of them even started recording the interaction with his neural implant, probably planning to share it on the galactic networks later. "You see," Dex continued, "humans think they can just show up anywhere in the galaxy and demand equal treatment. But civilization has standards. Some species simply aren't ready for establishments like ours." Jiwoo finally looked up from her meal, her expression calm, but her eyes showing a hint of steel that made Ren's tentacles twitch with sudden recognition. "I'd like to speak with management, please," she said quietly. Dex burst out laughing, slapping his thigh with all four hands. "Management. You want to speak with management?" He turned to his alien audience. "Did you hear that? She thinks she can make demands." The Altarian customers were practically rolling with laughter. "What's next?" One of them called out. "Is she going to threaten to leave a bad review? Humans don't get to make demands here," Dex declared, his voice carrying across the entire restaurant. "You finish your meal, pay your bill, and leave. That's how this works. This is a place for civilized beings, not for species that just learned how to build spacecraft a few decades ago." The comment about spacecraft sent a chill through Ren's nervous system. He looked more carefully at Jiwoo, studying her features, her posture, the way she carried herself despite the harassment. There was something familiar about her face, something he had seen before but couldn't quite remember. Then he noticed it, a small pin on her jacket collar, barely visible unless you knew what to look for. It was a simple design, just a circle, with 7 stars ranged in a specific pattern. To most beings, it would look like ordinary jewelry. But Ren's species never forgot anything they had seen, and he had definitely seen that symbol before. His blood turned to ice as the memory came flooding back. That wasn't just any pin. It was the personal insignia of the Galactic Commerce Authorities. Supreme Admiral, the same symbol he had seen on official documents, on news broadcasts, on the identification badges of the most powerful beings in known space. Ren's tentacles went completely still as the full horror of the situation hit him. The woman sitting quietly in the corner, enduring insults and discrimination with incredible patience, wasn't just any human. She was Admiral Park Jiwoo, the architect of the Galactic Trade Agreements, the person who had negotiated the peace treaties that ended the resource wars, and the individual who controlled more economic power than any other being in the galaxy. She was also the majority owner of Titan Station itself, the restaurant, the docking bays, the shopping districts, the residential areas, everything on Titan Station existed because of licenses and investments that had been personally approved by the woman Dex was currently humiliating in front of a crowd of alien customers. Ren's species had a phrase for moments like this: "When you realize you're standing on the edge of a black hole." It perfectly described the feeling of discovering that everything you thought you knew was completely wrong, and that disaster was about to consume everything around you. He watched in growing horror as Dex continued his performance, completely unaware that he was insulting the most powerful human in the galaxy. The other customers were still laughing and recording, not realizing they were witnessing what would probably become the most expensive mistake in the history of interstellar hospitality. Ren moved across the restaurant floor with the kind of desperate speed that only comes when someone realizes their entire world is about to collapse. His 8 tentacles were shifting from their normal deep purple to a sickly pale grey, a clear sign of extreme distress that every Nexai in the galaxy would recognize. He had to reach Jiwoo before Dex made things even worse, but he was already too late. Admiral Park, Ren whispered as he approached her table, his voice barely audible but carrying enough authority to cut through Dex's continued mockery. The effect was immediate and devastating. The word Admiral hit the restaurant like a shock wave from a colliding asteroid. Conversation stopped mid-sentence, glasses paused halfway to lips. Even the background music from the restaurant's sound system seemed to fade away as every being in the establishment tried to process what they had just heard. Dex's confident laughter died in his throat. His forearms, which had been gesturing dramatically just seconds before, suddenly felt too heavy to lift. The Altarian customers who had been recording and laughing looked at their devices in horror, realizing they might have just documented their own social destruction. "I deeply apologize for this treatment," Ren continued, his tentacles now almost completely white with fear. "If I had recognized you immediately, this never would have happened." The silence in the restaurant was so complete that everyone could hear the distant hum of Titan Station's massive rotation engines and the occasional whoosh of spacecraft docking at the external ports. Through the large windows, a sleek human-designed cargo vessel was just completing its approach, its hull displaying the logo of Stellar Industries, one of the companies that Jiwoo had helped establish. During the early days of galactic expansion, Jiwoo looked up calmly, her expression unchanged despite the chaos erupting round her. "No need for apologies, Ren. I'm just enjoying a quiet meal." But the damage was already done. Every alien in the restaurant was frantically accessing their neural implants and data tablets, searching for information about Admiral Park Jiwoo. What they found made their worst fears come true. The quantum traders who had been making jokes about primitive humans discovered that the woman they had been mocking was the person who had designed the quantum commerce protocols that made their entire business possible. Without her innovations in interstellar trade law, they would still be stuck trading basic minerals instead of exotic materials worth millions of credits. The Altarian customers who had been recording her meal for entertainment realized they had been filming the architect of the Galactic Peace Accords, the treaties that had ended decades of warfare and created the peaceful, prosperous galaxy they all enjoyed. She had personally negotiated with over 200 species to create the framework that allowed different civilizations to coexist and trade freely. The Etherean family near the windows learned that their luxury vacation to Titan Station was only possible because Admiral Park had invested her own resources to build the station's advanced life support systems, the artificial gravity, the perfect atmospheric controls, the radiation shielding that protected them from Saturn's harsh environment. All of it existed because of human technology and human funding. At the most shocking revelation was still coming. As more information flooded their devices, the alien customers discovered that Admiral Park wasn't just a military leader or a diplomat. She was the majority owner of Titan Station itself. Every business license, every rental agreement, every permit that allowed restaurants and shops to operate in this luxurious space facility, they all traced back to her personal approval and investment. Dex was staring at his data tablet with the expression of someone who had just watched their entire future disappear into a black hole. The woman he had been insulting and humiliating wasn't just another human tourist. She was technically his ultimate boss, the person whose decisions could shut down the restaurant with a single command. "Admiral Park," he whispered, his voice cracking with terror, I didn't know. Other patrons were starting to realize the full scope of their mistake. The human family with children that they had been ignoring and mocking. Those children were growing up in a galaxy that was safe and prosperous specifically because of the woman sitting quietly in the corner. The advanced medical treatments that had extended alien lifespans. The transportation networks that connected distant worlds. The communication systems that allowed instant contact across light years of space. Humans had contributed to all of it. The most embarrassing discovery came when several aliens realized that the spacecraft they had arrived on were powered by human-designed quantum drives. The same primitive species they had been mocking had created the technology that made modern space travel possible. Without human innovations, most of them would still be trapped in their home star systems, unable to venture beyond their local space. A Soren businessman who had been particularly vocal about human inferiority discovered that his own company's headquarters was located on New Geneva Station, a facility that had been built entirely with human engineering and was protected by human-designed defensive systems. He had spent years living and working inside human technology while dismissing humans as newcomers to galactic civilization. The recordings that some customers had made as entertainment were now becoming evidence of their own ignorance and prejudice. Several aliens were frantically trying to delete the files from their devices, but in the interconnected galaxy of 2387, information had a way of spreading faster than light itself. Through the restaurant's windows, more spacecraft were visible. Against the backdrop of Saturn's rings, human freighters carrying supplies to distant colonies. Alien vessels built with human components and navigating using human star charts. The entire scene was a testament to humanity's integration into galactic society. Yet the beings who benefited from human contributions had somehow convinced themselves that humans were still outsiders. Jiu continued eating her meal with perfect composure, watching as the reality of the situation settled over the restaurant like a heavy blanket of cosmic dust. She had come here to investigate reports of discrimination, but she was witnessing something much worse: systematic prejudice against the very species that had made modern galactic civilization possible. The irony was overwhelming. These aliens were sitting in a human-owned restaurant, on a human-built station, protected by human technology, using human-designed transportation, benefiting from human-negotiated peace treaties, and participating in human-created trade networks, all while treating humans like unwelcome intruders in their own galaxy. Within minutes of Rem's whispered revelation, the news was racing through Titan Station's communication networks faster than a quantum pulse transmission. The station's advanced AI systems automatically flagged the incident as Priority Alpha, the classification reserved for events that could affect diplomatic relations between species. Emergency alerts were being sent to embassy officers, trade representatives, and government officials across dozens of star systems. The first to arrive were the Altarian diplomats, their sleek silver shuttlecraft docking at Titan Station's VIP bay with unusual haste. Ambassador Zek Prime himself rushed through the corridors, his forearms moving frantically as he coordinated damage control efforts through his neural implant. Behind him came a team of protocol specialists, legal advisors, and cultural liaisons, all desperately trying to figure out how to apologize for one of their citizens insulting the most powerful human in known space. The Corton Trade Federation's emergency response was even more dramatic. Their massive diplomatic vessel, normally reserved for major treaty negotiations, appeared through a quantum jump gate within 30 minutes of receiving the alert. The ship's hull gleamed with ceremonial decorations as it requested priority docking clearance. Inside were 3 high-ranking trade ministers, their jeweled shells polished to perfection, carrying formal apology scrolls written in 17 different languages. Even the usually reserved Etherian collective had dispatched a representative, an unprecedented move since their species rarely acknowledged problems unless they threatened galactic stability. Their crystalline transport ship approached the station with its beautiful light displays dimmed in a traditional gesture of remorse, back in the Golden Nebula. Jiwoo continued her meal while chaos erupted round her. News drones were already gathering outside the restaurant's windows, their tiny cameras recording everything for the galactic media networks. The incident was becoming a major story across multiple star systems, with headlines like Human Admiral Faces Discrimination at Luxury Restaurant and Anti-Human Prejudice Exposed at Titan Station. Dex stood frozen beside Jiwoo's table, his blue skin now pale with terror as he watched his career, his reputation, and possibly his entire future dissolve before his eyes. Other restaurant staff members were keeping their distance, afraid that any association with him might destroy their own employment prospects. The alien customers who had been laughing and recording earlier were now desperately trying to leave without being identified by T. He knows drones, Admiral Park, Ambassador Zek Prime announced as he burst into the restaurant, slightly out of breath from running through the station corridors on behalf of the Altarian people. I offer our most sincere apologies for this shameful behavior. This individual does not represent our species' respect and admiration for humanity. Right behind him came Minister Call 9 of the Court and Trade Federation, his shell clicking nervously as he approached. Admiral, the Federation is horrified by what has occurred here. We have always valued our partnership with humanity. This incident is completely contrary to our principles. Jiwoo looked up from her meal, noting how quickly these powerful representatives had arrived to distance themselves from Dex's actions. I appreciate your concern, but I'm more interested in understanding how widespread this attitude really is. The question sent another wave of nervous energy through the gathering crowd of diplomats. They all knew that anti-human sentiment existed in various parts of the galaxy, but most had assumed it was limited to fringe groups and isolated incidents. The fact that it was happening openly in one of the most prestigious establishments on a major space station suggested the problem was much bigger than anyone had admitted. Security Chief Han arrived with a team of station guards, his expression grim as he surveyed the situation. As a human himself, he had experienced discrimination during his career, but nothing as blatant as what had happened here, Admiral. We can arrest him immediately for violating the Interspecies Equality Accords. The evidence is overwhelming. Jiwoo considered the option. Dex had clearly broken multiple galactic laws regarding discrimination based on species origin. The recordings made by other customers provided perfect evidence of his violations. He could be imprisoned, fined massive amounts of credits, and banned from working in the hospitality industry across all Federation worlds. But as she looked at Dex, trembling, terrified, and clearly beginning to understand the magnitude of his mistakes, Jiwoo realized that punishment alone wouldn't solve the underlying problem. Arresting him would make headlines for a few days, but it wouldn't change the attitudes that had led to this incident in the first place. I have a different proposal, Jiwoo said, standing up from her table for the first time since the revelation. The entire restaurant held its breath, waiting to hear the decision that would determine Dex's fate. You can keep your job, she continued, looking directly at the terrified waiter. But for the next 12 months, you will be working at the Human Heritage Center that we're opening next week. You'll learn the real history of human contributions to galactic civilization. You will study the technologies we developed, the conflicts we resolved, and the infrastructure we built that makes modern space travel possible. Dex's legs nearly gave out from relief. He had expected imprisonment, financial ruin, or exile from civilized space. Instead, He was being offered a chance to keep working and learn from his mistakes. You'll give guided tours to visitors from all species. Jiwoo continued. You'll explain how quantum drives work, how the peace treaties were negotiated, and how the trade networks were established. You'll become an expert on human achievements, and you'll share that knowledge with others. Ambassador Zek Prime looked puzzled by the unusual punishment. Admiral, while we appreciate your mercy, are you certain this is sufficient? The violations were quite serious. Jiwoo smiled slightly. Education is more powerful than punishment. If Dex truly learns what humans have accomplished, he'll become one of our strongest advocates, and his story will spread throughout the galaxy, showing other beings that ignorance can be overcome with knowledge. The proposal was brilliant in its simplicity. Instead of creating a martyr who might inspire sympathy among other anti-human groups, Jiwoo was transforming Dex into a living example of how prejudice could be defeated through understanding. The alternative, Security Chief Hon added helpfully, is that we follow standard protocol: arrest, trial, conviction, and permanent blacklisting from every major space station in the galaxy. Dex didn't need time to consider the options. I accept your offer. Admiral, thank you for this opportunity. I promise to learn everything I can about human contributions to our galaxy. As news of Jiwoo's decision spread through the communication networks, reactions were mixed but mostly positive. Some species praised her wisdom and mercy, while others wondered if she was being too lenient. But most observers recognized the strategic brilliance of the approach. Turning an enemy into an educator was far more effective than simply punishing him. The incident at the Golden Nebula was becoming a turning point in interspecies relations, and it was happening because one human had chosen understanding over revenge. 12 months had passed since the incident at the Golden Nebula, and Titan Station had become a completely different place. The Human Heritage Center, built in the station's central hub where millions of beings passed through daily, had become one of the most popular destinations in the outer colonies. Its holographic displays showed the real history of galactic civilization, and leading the tours with incredible passion was someone no one expected: Dex himself. Welcome, friends, to humanity's greatest contributions to our shared galaxy, Dex announced to a mixed group of visitors from 7 different species. His voice carried across the center's main hall, where a massive holographic display showed the first human quantum drive test from 50 years ago. What you're seeing here changed everything we know about space travel. A young quantum engineer in the group raised a jeweled hand. But I thought quantum drives were invented by the Altarian Science Council. Dex smiled warmly, the same expression that once showed contempt now radiating genuine enthusiasm for teaching. That's what I used to believe too. But the historical records are clear. Dr. Lisa Chen of Earth's Quantum Research Institute created the first working prototype in 2337. The Altarian Council helped improve the design, but the breakthrough came from human innovation. The holographic display shifted to show actual footage of the first successful quantum jump, a small human research vessel disappearing from Earth's orbit and reappearing near Mars in seconds. Instead of months, the alien visitors watched in amazement as the true story unfolded before their eyes. And this is just the beginning. Dex continued, leading the group deeper into the center. Over here, we have the universal translation matrix that allows all of us to communicate right now, created by human linguist Dr. Park Min-ho, who spent 20 years studying over 300 alien languages to develop the core algorithms. An elderly Etherean in the group shook his translucent head in disbelief. I've been using translation implants for 40 years. I never knew they were based on human research. Most people don't. Dex replied gently. That's why this center exists. To share the truth that somehow got lost in all the politics and prejudice. The next section of the center was Dex's favorite, the Peace Treaty Hall. Massive displays showed Admiral Park Ji-woo negotiating with hostile alien warlords. Her patient diplomacy slowly building the framework that ended the resource wars. Video footage captured the historic moment when 200 species signed the Galactic Peace Accords, creating the stable civilization they all enjoyed today. Before these treaties, Dex explained, our galaxy was torn apart by constant warfare. Species fought over mining rights, trade routes, and territorial boundaries. Billions died in conflicts that seemed impossible to resolve. Then Admiral Park proposed something revolutionary. Shared prosperity instead of zero-sum competition. A Soran merchant in the group was taking detailed notes on his data pad. I run shipping routes that cross 17 different star systems. Without these peace treaties, that would be impossible. Exactly. Dex nodded. The trade networks, the shipping lanes, the standardized currency systems, all of it came from human proposals during the peace negotiations. Admiral Park didn't just end the wars. She designed the economic foundation that makes modern galactic commerce possible. As the tour continued, Dex shared story after story of human contributions that had been forgotten or ignored. The radiation shielding that protected space stations from cosmic storms, developed by human engineers after a solar flare disaster nearly destroyed an early colony. The emergency life support systems that had saved countless lives during spacecraft accidents created by human safety researchers who believed that every life in the galaxy had value, regardless of species. The most powerful part of the center was the final hall, where visitors could experience interactive simulations of key moments in galactic history. Dex watched as aliens stepped into holographic recreations of human laboratories, diplomatic meetings, and rescue missions. They could feel what it was like to be the human scientists working tirelessly to solve problems that affected all species, or the human negotiators spending years away from their families to build peace between hostile civilizations. I spent decades believing humans were newcomers who didn't belong in civilized space. Dex admitted to his tour group as they prepared to leave. I was completely wrong. Humans didn't join galactic civilization. They built it. That evening, as Dex finished his final tour of the day, he received a message that made his heart skip a beat. Admiral Park Ji-woo was returning to Titan Station and had requested dinner at the Golden Nebula, not as an inspection or investigation, but as a simple meal between friends. When Ji-woo arrived at the restaurant, the transformation was immediately obvious. The same establishment that had once treated humans with contempt now proudly displayed human cultural artifacts and served dishes inspired by Earth cuisine alongside traditional alien foods. The staff, all of whom had been through cultural sensitivity training following the previous year's incident, welcomed her with genuine warmth and respect. Dex personally escorted her to the best table in the restaurant, the same spot with a spectacular view that he had once claimed was reserved for established patrons. As he poured her water into a crystal glass, his hands trembled slightly with emotion. Admiral Park, he said quietly, I need to thank you for changing my life. A year ago, I was ignorant, prejudiced, and proud of my ignorance. You could have destroyed me. But instead you gave me the greatest gift possible, the truth. Ji-woo looked round the bustling restaurant, where humans and aliens were dining together, sharing conversations, and building the friendships that would strengthen galactic civilization for generations to come. Through the windows, the view showed dozens of spacecraft from different species working together, human freighters delivering supplies to court and colonies, Altarian research vessels sharing data with human scientists, Eartherian passenger ships, carrying mixed crews of different species exploring the galaxy together. The truth was always there, Dex. she replied with a warm smile. It just needed someone willing to look for it. A news alert flashed across the restaurant's information displays, announcing that 3 more space stations had opened their own human heritage centers. Inspired by the success of Titan Station's program, anti-human incidents across the galaxy had dropped by 70% as more beings learned the real history of interspecies cooperation. You know what I've learned this year? Dex asked as he served Jiwoo's meal with the same care he would give to his own family. Humans aren't just contributors to galactic civilization. You're the reason we have a civilization at all. Without human innovation, diplomacy, and generosity, we'd still be fighting wars in the dark ages of space travel. Jiwoo raised her glass in a toast, and Dex joined her with his own, round them. The restaurant buzzed with the sound of multiple species enjoying their evening together, their different languages blending into the beautiful symphony of a truly integrated galactic society. To understanding, Jiwoo said simply, "To the future we're building together." Dex replied, "Outside the windows." Saturn's rings sparkled in the starlight while spacecraft from across the galaxy continued their eternal dance round Titan Station, a human-built platform where species that had once been enemies now worked as partners, friends, and family in the greatest adventure the universe had ever seen. The end.